Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started right at 2 o'clock on the dot today. My name is Kate, and I work at Dude Solutions, and I'm going to be one of your hosts for the day. Just want to cover a few housekeeping items before we get started. The phone lines are muted just to reduce any background noise because we have so many folks on the line. So if you have any questions, you can submit them to me in the bottom left hand of your screen with the chat feature. And I'll save them for the end, and we can get all those questions covered. And if we don't get to all of them, I'll make sure that someone follows up with you directly after the webinar. This webinar is recorded, so you will get a link to download this recording by the end of the week, I'd say, so you can share it with others or give it a re-listen if you'd like. Today we have Tamikia White on the line with us, and she is here to talk about creating a facility use program and how that has gone for her in Metro Nashville Public Schools. And I won't keep you guys any longer, so Tamikia, if you want to take it away, I think we're all ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. And today, well, thanks, Kate, for asking me or allowing me to share a little of what I know about creating a facility use program. And we're just going to jump right in there. And as she mentioned, if you do have any questions, please drop them in the bottom, and I'll do the best I can to answer what I know. And then, of course, we'll rely on School Dude to fill in where we may have a delay there. All right. So, Kate, am I controlling this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this seems to be the question or definitely the topic. How do I even start a facility request program? And that actually is the question that I asked myself over 9 years ago now. With dealing with such a large school district, I think we have about 86,000 students, so we're fairly large. And we're used pretty often, you can only imagine. But that was the question. What do I need to do to actually get a request program implemented, started? How would it look, and all of that? And it's pretty much with planning. You have to clearly define a plan, write down your plan. But these are some of the things that I recommend. And definitely the first one is, what are you wanting to accomplish with the program? Are you needing something to show the cost recovery effect? Are you wanting to show if high school gyms are being used more than maybe a middle school or elementary, and you needed to capture all of that data? So that's really the question I had to ask myself. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish with implementing this program? The next thing I needed to know was, or needed to do rather, was gather all of the stakeholders for that project. And that could vary depending on your district or your department. Principals, in our case, secretaries, school bookkeepers, and obviously the higher management needed to buy into it because obviously we have to pay for it. So we had to get all of those parties involved to see the importance of actually having a program in place or developing a program. And again, it goes back to that first question, trying to figure out what it is that we wanted to accomplish as a district with having a facility program. The next question was, who all should be included on this project? And that depends, again, this is the planning phase, so who all do I need to assist with capturing the necessary information that I needed from the form building, hosting the form on the website, or looking at the different roles that will be utilized? Who needed what role? How do we want each individual to, or depending on the role, how we want them to use the actual School Dude software? And the biggest question, how do I get everyone to buy into the program? And when you start talking cost recovery and savings, especially with upper management, that tends to be a good conversation to have, or to get their input, especially when we talk about recouping some of the costs for utilities and so forth that the district normally incur when deciding to rent out their facility. All right, so what I had to do once I did all of my planning, got the parties interested, they were willing to at least sit at the table with me to see the importance of having a facility program, and it was fairly simple. Obviously, I had to pitch the cost saving factor, but it was also to reduce the liability factor that a school district could incur with allowing outside users to utilize your facilities, and that can range from injuries and so forth, and especially with after-school hours, we typically don't want the district to have to be held responsible for those, especially if it's a community group that's using it. So that brought me to the unveiling of my plan. I had to go through what the implementation would look like, and that was pretty much using the school do resources. They were very helpful early on with me to host things such as this as webinars with the actual participants. I think we started out with using like maybe 30. We introduced it to like 30 schools at a time. I have about 169 schools in my district. So we did the pilot program with about 30 schools to just kind of make sure that the processes that we developed was actually what we needed, and that it would actually fit the needs of the district. Who will be responsible for what roles? And that's in actual School Dude. The software itself has different roles, from administrator 1, admin 2, a requestor, and then service providers. We'll look at that here in a little bit. And what I've seen or heard from prior School Dude University conferences, each district has a different role. Like, for instance, in my district, my site admin 1 are like my principals and so forth. So there is some flexibility in how you set up your roles using the actual software. What time frame am I looking to roll out a new program? Actually, like I said, I started out with 30 schools under my pilot to actually, again, look at the process, look at the program in totality. And we did that a year prior to opening it up to the remaining district. Within that year was obviously a lot of training, a lot of back and forth of how we would get the schools and who at the school would do what, et cetera. So your time frame, pretty much if you're in a short window, then you may have to speed up your overall plan. But I suggest a good solid year to plan, and that's literally to get through all of the start of school, get through an end of school or Christmas. Let me back up. The holiday season is also a big time for us. So to get through a holiday season with requests of organizations wanting to have their holiday parties and so forth. So that's a real big thing here. And then to actually get through a summer. So I do recommend roughly, if you can, about a year. So where can I get help? And I can only say this enough. Please use your School Dude help resources from your account manager to actually calling. I think when I first started this program, I was calling at least 3 times a week. I want to say they thought I probably worked for School Dude. But I had questions, and I needed to know, how this worked, or what should I do if I have this. And you'll get that as you jump in there to roll out your program. There are things that you probably didn't think of in your well-defined plan that, it's day of, and I need to know how to access this, or what should I do, especially with like HVAC and all of those type things. If the air is not working, how do I let someone know to that a group will be in there using the gym on Sunday. And then setting up your service providers, that's one that came as we move through the process. Another helpful tip or tool was, or is rather, to contact other school districts, myself, others that have been using the program for a while now that are a little bit more familiar with the program or a process. I didn't find anyone that was not willing to assist me. So that was a good resource to have, was school districts that were currently or already using it and how they used it. And if you're lucky enough or fortunate enough to have a team, consult with your team, and that could be your school administrators, the secretaries, someone that's in your department that was also working with this software as well. Just, develop some type of support system that will help you. I see a question. Do I just wait for those?
Oh, no, we can go ahead and answer. The question, so everyone knows, is when you say a year, are you referring to gathering information? And Brad just wanted you to elaborate a little bit on what you did during that full year with the 30 test schools.
Good deal. What I mean by using a year, I started before we actually purchased the program. It was, again, gathering. I was making my plan or developing my plan. So when I presented this to the executive leadership team of why we needed it, I wanted to have as many facts as possible. I sat in a school group came to the Williamson County School District, and they were elaborating on how this program worked, and it was area school districts that were already using it. So I gathered enough information by attending that meeting to formulate what I wanted my program to look like. So from there, it was, getting all the data that the district needed. And within that time of them buying the actual program, it was probably 9 months of planning left out of that. And then, again, that was to get the roles situated, the participants. What do I really want them to do? And a couple of slides down, I'll talk about my actual process, and then that way if you have a question. So I'm hoping, Brad, that answered, or at least as we continue, I'm sure you'll get the answer. If not, just let me know, and I'll try to cover it as best I can. But, yes, it was a year of total, and that was from gathering, getting the buy-in, and rolling out the pilot. Okay? All right, let's see here. So implementing a new scheduling process. I'm a trainer by nature, so that was my biggest and longest process, was getting everyone trained in their roles. Defining the roles in the process was having the principals actually approve, and it was the routing, and you'll see that or hear that here in a bit. But getting the route set up of how the community could request the facilities and go through the process of getting everything verified from insurance and what we would need from the outside users, et cetera. So training them on that, and them being the school secretary, bookkeepers, the school staff that actually inputs the request. Describe the elements that's needed to complete the process, and that's simply your application. Some are online totally. We're still paper. We have online, but it's just for our professional development center. But for record purposes and auditing purposes, we still have to have paper. So we require the outside users to complete a physical paper application. It's online, but it's still a paper copy. Identify the steps from start to finish of the process, and what I mean by that is when someone requests to use the facilities, what is it that you're asking them, or what is it that they need to do to request the use of your school gym? Who do they need to contact? Is it to come to your office before they go to the school, or go to the school first, get the permission, input the form or complete the form? It's entered into School Dude, and then you have the approval from your office and so forth. Develop user-specific training, and what I mean by that is what's specific to. Kate, I see someone's screen is stuck.
Yes, I'm replying to her right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Develop user-specific training, and that is specific to your actual process. What is it? How will this software fit into your process? So you want to train them specifically on what it is that you want them to do. So I had a lot of Requestor training because I had to show the school secretary bookkeepers how to actually, what's on the form that needs to actually go into the software program. So it was just kind of that word processing or data entry, if you will, type of training that I did. And then I did separate trainings for the site admin, literally on just how to go in and actually approve it, what notifications will pop up or what to look for, how to use the drop-down boxes to toggle between requests and so forth. So you will want to look at what's specific to your process and train from there while using the helpful resources that School Dude provides. So I took their manual and literally pulled out what I needed and built my own manual based off of that, so they would have a PDF file to refer back to. That was point specific. All right, here are the roles that we use, or that's in the software program. The Requestor role, and again, primarily those are my school secretaries and bookkeepers. They are the ones that, when the outside groups come in, when they actually come in to request the form with their application and so forth, this particular role enters the request or open up the ticket or request, whichever terminology you use, in the actual software. Once it's entered, again, this program is set up on the routing system, and my site administrator ones, and it will vary. If you talk to other school districts, they have it just a little bit different. But I use my site administrator one token as the school administrators that will actually authorize or approve the usage for that specific location, because one person can approve just for one school building. So depending on the size of your district, and like I said, we're fairly large, so with having over 169 schools, each school principal is responsible for the approval of their location. The site admin 2 position that we use, these are like our financial operations office people that actually process the invoices for us. They would go in, set up the invoices, post the payments and so forth. So they have that role, and I've opened that up to all school locations. When you're setting up your roles in the software program, they have access to every school location for obvious reasons, because they would have to process the payment for any school that we have. The account administrator would be someone like yourself if you're the one that's organizing it. So I'm the actual account administrator, or it even asks for comptroller, if I recall, in the setup. But it's the person that will issue the final approval or authorization for the account. And again, this is strictly for my district. You between your roles are inputted, but for my district, it's also the person that's responsible for all the account updates, meaning if you get new users that you have to establish an account for them, this particular role is the individual that would take care of that. Service providers, those are like your maintenance, your custodians, the event setup crew if you have that, security, my HVAC people, audio tech, and that's where you could type, once you select, say you need security, you could put all of that in a text box, and it is a text box, so you can type as much as you need. to give them specific directions. This feature is fairly popular around the winter months with snow and so forth. I wanted to make sure that the HVAC was operating, because if you guys' district is on energy saving like we are, when school's not in session, the HVAC tends to not operate. So by alerting in the FS Direct, by letting the HVAC techs know that there will be, so it's kind of opening up a ticket, if you will, that there will be someone that's utilizing the gym on Saturday, and we want to make sure that it's the HVAC is operating properly. And I do see the questions, but I can't answer them, so I'll just keep going and kind of glance as I can.
I have one that we can get to right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Someone's asking if an outside entity can enter a request for use, or is that based on how you set it up?
You can. We do, like I mentioned, we do have the community use feature, but we only let the outside users that are using our professional development center, they're the only ones that enter it directly from the website. But that is, to answer your question, yes, the outside entity can enter it directly. It just depends on how you want it set up. Because we need the actual documents, we just have the school actually enter it when the outside entity brings it to the school. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, drop a note down there and I can try to go back and reiterate if needed. Okay. So to train your users, and again, this is, a lot of it will be redundant, but establish who will use FS Direct. Who do you want operating this? Is it just coming straight to you from the outside entity as asked before? Or is it the community organization, is it the schools themselves? In my case, the school personnel is the one that actually enters the actual request, and it's kind of an early approval. That was my mindset behind it. If it's entered and it's approved by the principal, then unless they have insurance issues and or payment disparities or whatever, typically we're going to approve it on the back end on our side. But that's kind of giving me the authorization that it's okay for said group to use your school based on what it is that they are trying to do. Establish the roles that will help your process, and that's kind of a repeat of the previous slide. Your requester roles, are you going to just leave that open to the community use side of this program? If so, that's fine. But when it's entered by the outside entity, who is it routed to? Who does the request need to go to get looked at or processed, approved, if you will? And then after it's actually approved, it's gone through whatever your process is, and it's actually approved, who's going to assign the invoicing? Who sets that up, and so forth? So, it depends on, and that's going into the next bullet point there, train your internal process and it should say train your internal process. Train on your internal process and the FS Direct software. Mine was totally separate, and again, that's because there were some things that we needed to do internally, like show them how to enter the actual application, since I have school secretaries that enter it. So, and then what do they do with the paperwork after that? So I had to tell them, or train them rather, on you make a copy and you office it to my office, or you can scan it, fax it, or whatever. Make sure you attach all the documents. Because I personally check all of the insurance, because outside groups, not all of them, but some of them do unfavorable things. So they may submit a document and it's not necessarily theirs, or it's not valid. So I don't have the schoolwork do anything with the insurance document except for attach it to the packet and send it to my office. And then it was, again, the process when you open up the FS Direct, what do I need to enter, or what's been input? So I had to, show them the screens and what to do what, or how do I go back and use the calendar feature? You guys, you will get that a lot. How do I know if, if it's approved? And in my trainings, I tell them it's just like the traffic light. If it's red, that means stop. It's been stopped. It's only submitted. Yellow is a yield. It could be that, it's been approved by the principal, but we're still processing it, meaning we're verifying the insurance, making sure they don't have any outstanding payments that may have, slipped past us and we didn't do not rent them early on. So that's kind of what we're doing in our processing. And again, School Dude is very helpful. You can chat with them if you just go in and you have your screen up, or you can call. I like the chat feature because you can get a response and look at your screen kind of at the same time. Use the videos, whatever you can pull in to help you get through your process. It is a valuable amount of information that's out there to use, and I've dropped a link there, so once you get the this webinar information back, you can click on that link and see some of the videos, or contact them directly, and they will set up a training with you if you needed that. Like I said, when I first began this, we were probably doing training maybe 2 days a week. We did that for about a month at least, with trying to get as many people. And if it depends, again, that all will depend on the size of your district and how many individuals you needed to get trained on that early rollout. Is there any question I need to jump in and answer, Kate, or keep going?
Nope, we're good to go.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we just got one.
Okay.
Just kidding. Nancy wants to know, does insurance have to be submitted manually?
I'm not understanding what you mean by manually, but there is, if you're asking if there's a place inside the software program where you enter the insurance information, the answer to that is yes. We require the group to submit the insurance to us. I know some districts have a separate insurance policy that they will allow them to purchase separately. Ours, we don't do that here. They actually would have to go to an insurance agency and take out that general liability $1 million coverage and submit that to us as being the certificate holder. So Nancy, hopefully that answers what you're saying. If not, just drop a note back down there and I will do my best to answer it. But they can just fax that over. They don't do anything with it but just submit it with the paperwork. And then I handle, because I have to verify it on my end. So defining your process, I have a sample of my actual process, and it's literally just these 5 steps, but you would be amazed at how long it takes to get from number 1 to number 2. So it's basically an outside organization completes the request form and submit that information directly to the school itself. And our online, and because I can see that pop up periodically over here in this Dropbox, our online entry is only done for our professional development center because it's totally separate from any of the schools. That's the only one that we let the community users, if you will, use the online entity. So once they completed the school requestor, which is like that secretary, that bookkeepers, and some high schools it's an assistant principal, et cetera, but they would actually enter that request directly into FS Direct. That's filling out the space of needed, meaning the dates, the times, the location, and all of that. I have them make a copy, and I stress a copy. That way they will have knowledge of what's going on in their building. So make a copy and send it to our office, and that's where we'll start the processing. But in between, it being entered, and it goes, it's routed next to the school administrator. I tell them all the time, it doesn't show up on my side until the school administrator actually approves it. And all that means internally for me is just I want to make sure that that dot is yellow, that the school administrator has given his or her okay that we're allowing this group to use designated space on this particular day and time. And once it's routed to our office, again, we go through the verification process, and that's checking to make sure that the insurance is valid, make sure they don't have an outstanding bill, or that they didn't use someone else's information. Our district only rent to nonprofit organizations, so that's another step in there. We actually have to verify in our Tennessee online website their sales tax ID number to make sure that their EIN they're actually a certified nonprofit organization. I know some districts rent to private companies as well. That's just one of the things that we have in place here at our district. We can only rent to nonprofit organizations. So once I get the packet and I get the insurance and all of that, and I see the electronic approval, I'll go ahead and go through all of those that I've mentioned before, verifying the insurance, verifying that they are indeed a nonprofit, et cetera, or making those phone calls, because I still get some groups that do not submit the insurance with the packet, so you have to email them or call them to get that information, and then you go through that. We are very popular with video and film here, I guess because we're Nashville, and the show Nashville is actually filmed in one of my school buildings, but we have an additional step in there. If they are requesting to film, I have to get that and send that over to our Director of Communications. They read the scripts, the storyboards, the song lyrics to make sure that it fits the district's policy on communications, et cetera, before we would release that. And they give them all you can't use the name of the school, that can't be visible, et cetera. So that's an additional step in there in the processing. I have on my website, I'd say that it's a 10 to 14 day turnaround. Now, it does not take me that long to process a request. That delay typically lies back up here once it's entered to get down then to the school administrator actually approving it. I don't, again, move on any request until I get the approval notification from the school that it's been approved by the principal. So I put that window out there just so people won't call every day. They submit it on Friday and Monday morning before you can have that first cup of coffee. You know, they're calling to try, I submitted a request Friday, and I'm trying to make sure that it's been approved and so forth. And then finally, once everything goes through the process, the fees are added. We require a deposit, and that information is sent out to the organization to let them know you have a 48-hour turnaround for the deposit, or we will cancel the request. So that's basically my process that I'm using currently here with Metro Schools. I see a question that popped up at the end.
Yeah, we're getting lots of requests for your FS Direct handbook, as well as any releases that you use for movie or film shoots. And if you're willing to share, yeah, I will have folks, there's a survey that will pop up after the webinar is over. If you type in there that you'd like to get those, I can give Tamikia a list, and she can share what she's able to with you guys.
Will do, no doubt.
Perfect.
All right, let's see. And as being a past educator, I know that there are different types of learners. So this is just a physical flow chart, if you will, for them to see, and I've numbered. It's just kind of flowing around, and I see my arrows are starting to touch some of my text. But this is just a flow chart of the previous slide. It says pretty much the same thing, because I get a lot of emails or a lot of phone calls. What do I do next? What do I do here? How do I do, and so forth. So I just, I send this or tell them to refer to your process cycle, and it's just that. And it's a cycle because literally it just repeats itself. Each request is the exact same. So I won't go through that. You'll have that, but it's literally just a slide that we discussed previously. I see Eleanor, and it moved, so I'll keep going. So when I did my individual trainings, I trained on how I wanted the process to look. This is part of the guide that I gave them with that process form. I also gave them like things that they could look for. And I even went as far, because I'm kind of adamant about this, I even went as far as making screenshots of the actual and put in, like, point to errors. This is where you put said name or whatever. That way they can see, they can use that and compare what they're actually looking for once they get in the software. Because you'll find out they'll sit in the training and they'll go through it and tell you, yes, they understand, and the moment they get back to their desk, they do not understand. So I tried to just equip them with as much information that I possibly could. I don't know about if you guys are fortunate to have a staff, but I'm a one-person operation, so I literally handle all of these from start to finish, and then I also handle charter school. So it is a process, so I have to make sure. I have to drive this type of stuff home, and I have to make sure that they follow it. Other than that, I would lose my mind. But this is a quick check for my site administrators, meaning the school principals. I just tell them what they can do to get in and how they can go in and approve or deny. If they deny it, because sometimes they'll say, oh, they used my school a year ago and they totally trashed the place, so I don't want them to use it again. You'll get all of that in the information box once that schedule is routed to you, and that way you can go ahead and just follow through with them on that. And then I just tell them simply that it's just a repeat. Depending on that number on the screen, it tells you how many requests that you have waiting your approval. You would just complete the same process over. For site admins, it's simply just a approve, save, or deny and save. That's pretty much how we set it up here. My requestors, their reference, I gave them this and telling them how to log into SchoolDude, giving them the easiest way to get there, their username. I set everyone up using their email address, and then we give them the password. I've changed it since new user, but new user is probably the default. There are 3 different types of schedules. I've tried to put that in there, what to do for each one. And I put that disclaimer that you would determine which schedule to use based upon the dates that the group is needed. A normal schedule is the same. It's for one day or multiple days, but it's at the exact same time each day, same room, etc. And I think that goes up to maybe 20 dates that you can drop in there. Recurring can do the same thing normal does, and it's just as it sounds. It's something that's recurring. We have a lot of churches. I think we have over 45 churches that utilize our school buildings on Saturdays and Sundays. So they're typically there from the start of the fiscal year, which is we're on a July 1 to June 30th school calendar. So they're typically there in a recurring factor. They're going to use it every Sunday from 1 to 5 or 10 a.m. to 1 or something, and it's the gym or a classroom, etc. We put them on recurring. That way it's just going to occur. It will allow you to enter a start date. So, again, I would start with July 1 of 2018, and then it will end the recurrence on June 30th, 2019, or so forth. And then I tell them to just enter the information directly from the request form. And yours, again, may not say that. It depends on how you want your process to be set up. If you want them to use it, you want the outside entity to enter it, then you wouldn't have that line in there. I tell them to fax or interoffice me the documents that the group has submitted, and then also make sure that they know you have the schedule password. You can, attach that to your schedule for entry. And then just make sure that they click save, and I let them know that this routes the schedule to the school principal. That way they won't call me once they've entered it. Do you see my schedule has been approved? Well, now they're very familiar. It doesn't come to Tamikia until your principal actually approves it. And then I tell them to check their status because, again, I can't possibly take every phone call and every email request. So I would tell them if it says submitted, or in my physical training, I would use the traffic light. If it has the red dot there, that means that it has not yet been approved by your school principal. So there's a stop at some point. The yellow, it says approved inactive. The first approved is letting me know that the school principal or school administrator has approved it, so now it's in our work queue to get it processed. It's still inactive because we're verifying the insurance. We're making sure they are a nonprofit, et cetera. And then once I have verified and gotten all of that, and then there is, I forgot to mention, the pending. I do have to check some as pending, especially if it's a group that hasn't purchased their insurance yet. So I just mark them as pending and put a date on it. As I communicate with them, I give them like a week to get things back, and then I, select that in the software, and it'll send a task reminder that said group is needing your attention, or this schedule is needing your attention. And the last light on my traffic symbol is the green light. If it's green or if it says approved active, that simply means that the event is approved and it's good to go. They can notify, which I notify the custodians and so forth in the system. But that means that, it's on their calendar and it's actively approved. All right, let me speed up here a little bit. Follow-up and feedback, again, that was what I needed early on to get the pilot participants. What is it that you like? Does it help? And they were fine with it because it helped with losing the documents. It was something that they can refer back to kind of quickly, pretty much at their fingertips without, having to guess. And here, again, just make sure you train all of the involved parties. Whatever you want your process to look like and who all you want in on your process, you want to make sure, and what I mean by that are the roles. Get all the parties or roles trained to how you want this process to look. Go ahead and implement your process. You don't have to roll it out to everyone. I did high schools, I did middle schools, and then a couple of elementary, because in our district, elementary is fairly simple. Not a lot of usage outside of the after-school programs or after-care type clubs and so forth. So theirs are fairly simple. But I did use a couple of them just to kind of get feedback from all of them of how it works at their school, or, especially I've used my heavy users or schools that are used a lot, rather. I use them as my pilot people. Follow up with them and get their feedback, simply sending an email, or you may want to send out some type of survey from SurveyMonkey, or your district has some type of survey tool that they use. But just to get them to let you know what you have put together. Is it helping? Is it not helping? Any type of constructive feedback that you can get will only help you when you sit down to fully use your system and so forth. And again, use that feedback as a tool to enhance your system. I had to go through lots of kinks before I got it to where it is, and it's still evolving and changing as my district continues to grow. We're adding new schools and so forth, so it's just making it a little simpler, I guess, to look at what's working. And I'm looking at how high schools are a little bit different from my elementary, so just trying to figure out the best method to use in that. So I haven't changed anything yet, not sure I will, but just having that feedback helps a lot when you're looking at changing your program or, for this instance, implementing your program. All right. Simply, let's talk about your process. Is there anyone that has that currently has a process in place? Who all is involved in your process? Have you thought that far? And what are the steps you need to take to implement your new process? So I guess this is opening us up to questions and answers.
Yes, and while you guys are submitting your questions, we're going to stay on this slide. If you guys want more information about the events tool that Tamikia just spoke about, whether it's support, if you already have it, or if you want to see what it looks like in, a quick little demo of it so you can see if it's a good fit for you, just let us know right here. I do have a question from earlier from Sheila. She wanted to know, do you have your schools pre-populate all of their internal usage?
No. Now, once the group obviously has used a facility previously, it's down. It's now in the system. I'll just use our Girl Scouts, for instance. Obviously, if you're like us, we have hundreds of troops that we got 9 in one school, and then they're kind of all over. So what I tell them to do is, it's the same organization, it's Girl Scouts, but I have them say Girl Scouts -White. Use that person's last name. That way we'll know which troop, or they'll put the troop number, just some or separating the different troops. So to answer the question, no, I don't have them pre-populate, but once the organization's used, it's stored in the system. So it's populated at that time. Is that what you need? Can you drop that down if you do?
So we have a few questions for our client services team, and for the folks that did submit those, I'll get them to our team as soon as this webinar is over. But other than that, if you guys think of any other questions for Tamikia right after this ends, like I said, a survey will pop up, so you can submit those there, and I can get you in touch with her. But I think we're ready to wrap up for the day. Tamikia, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a really great webinar, and I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to join us.
Good deal. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, like I said, let us know any other questions. Submit them in the survey, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Heidi, have a great day.
Bye.